It's not hard to see why the original Sims is still so beloved nearly 25 years after its release. Not only was it a revolutionary new idea at the time, but it was also the gift that kept on giving, as Maxis and EA supported it with 7 official expansion packs over 3 years. And unlike these days, where the announcement of a new Sims add-on is usually met with trepidation from a sizable portion of the fan base, back then almost every expansion introduced what felt like essential new features, and it's telling that many of them still form the foundation for a lot of modern DLC. However, while Hot Date is usually viewed as the definitive Sims 1 expansion, my personal favorite has always been Superstar. It might not have been as revolutionary as its older sibling, but the celebrity lifestyle it introduced added a far more interactive alternative to the standard career paths, and has long held a legitimate claim for being the most challenging content offered in a mainline Sims game. Climbing the star charts and separating yourself from the rest of the wannabes in Studio Town will leave your Sims physically and mentally exhausted, but it's all worth it for that sweet, elusive taste of fame.
Hey, this tastes like shit.
And so Hollywood Dust moves out to the big city, attracted by the bright lights and potential to make a name for himself. A mystery man does pop by and attempt to lure Hollywood from the path of stardom, but Hollywood rejects his sorcery and disposes of the strange package he left behind, then begins committing himself to his craft. This is eventually interrupted by the customary welcome wagon, which consists of the very pasty version of myself from my Sims 1 review and his wife Bella. Hollywood hits it off with the two of them well enough, although things do eventually become a little uncomfortable when their marital issues become apparent, as Dusty can't go more than 5 minutes without bringing up Bella's ex-husband. You're exhibiting some real baby dick energy there, my man. You're making me look terrible. Eventually, Hollywood puts an end to this by telling the two of them to settle things at their own place, then locks in for that first point of creativity before hitting up the weights to sculpt his physique. After all, being a true superstar isn't just about the talent, you've also gotta look the part.
That is a body that just won't quit. And I bet if you pop those pants off, you're gonna find a bird that just won't quit either.
Feeling confident in his new abilities, Hollywood then answered an ad in a magazine for the SimCity Talent Agency. Now their tagline of "You need us more than we need you" wasn't exactly encouraging, but considering they were the only game in town, it was 100% accurate. He might have only been a lowly nobody for now, but as Hollywood slept that night, he dreamt of all the possibilities that laid before him. So the next morning, Hollywood called a cab and raced off to Studio Town, where he was filled in on the basics of fame by Lana the PA, and then spent a few moments being starstruck by some of the big names.
Mr. Bovine Joni himself.
Once he's done fawning over the real stars, Hollywood then gets to work. Of course, nobody's going out of their way to hire a nobody, so when you're first starting out, you've got to think outside the box and get a little creative when it comes to drawing attention to yourself. Hollywood's first gig is an impromptu puppet show that looks borderline unwatchable, but the one person in attendance seems to enjoy it, and that was enough for him to take his first true steps on the path to fame and increase his star rank to stepping stone. Looking to keep his hot streak going, Hollywood then made his way over to the karaoke lounge, although he quickly discovered that the public wasn't nearly as enamored with his singing ability. Disheartened but still determined, Hollywood called a cab and headed over to Buckingham Galleries, where his lack of true talent wouldn't hold him back from breaking into modeling. You know you're on the fast track to stardom when a lecherous old man is taking scantily clad pictures of you.
You want to be a star, don't you? Then take it off! Yeah, that's nice.
Although I'm not quite sure why an advertisement for a bag of chips calls for him to be in a Speedo, and Hollywood was never told what magazine this would be appearing in, now that I think about it.
All for Silas, all for Silas.
Inspired by his success, Hollywood returned home, and after some much-needed rest and recovery, he was back in the lab mastering the various disciplines. Some people might think that you just roll out of bed one day and get discovered, but Hollywood knew that if you really wanted to make it big in Studio Town, then it was all about the work you put in when the cameras weren't on you. The next day, he would head back over to the karaoke lounge and put his newly refined skills on display with a couple of sets. The crowd absolutely loved it, and just like that, Hollywood was now an insider. However, just in case he was starting to get a big head, he was quickly knocked back to reality when he went over to Midlock Multiplex and tried to cut his debut album, only to get relegated to recording commercial jingles instead. It might have been a blow to the ego, but it paid the bills, and he didn't have to strip for a director who pretended not to know what a closed set was, so he couldn't complain too much. Plus, his growing stature within the industry was being reflected with a few sweet perks.
He stacks paper to the ceiling
and rides on 24-inch chrome.
Still, like all those who came before him, Hollywood soon discovered that the pursuit of fame was all-encompassing. Even when you weren't working in Studio Town, you were still working. Whether it was trying to bump elbows with your fellow celebs, making sure to keep up with your fans, or staging the lamest publicity stunt of all time in a desperate attempt to get the people talking. And it's also worth pointing out that the pay's not great when you're first attempting to break into the business. I mean, there's no denying that Hollywood would have made a lot more money at this point just working a standard 9 to 5. His commitment to his art had another unforeseen side effect as he frequently neglected to do any housework, allowing his home to fall into a state of disrepair. In fact, shortly after he reached the rank of studio fly, it all became a little too overwhelming. His funds were dangerously low and his social life was non-existent, as most of his fellow celebrities wouldn't give him the time of day.
I feel like you're big-legging me, dude. Are you taking me seriously?
This also made it impossible for him to advance any further, as Lana had made it very clear when he first arrived that having the right connections was a key part of becoming a star. But when he took time off and attempted to establish these essential relationships, he found himself being punished for his lack of appearances at the studio. It felt like he was stuck on a treadmill. Each day he found himself having to work harder than the last just to maintain his current position. And so, Hollywood retired from Studio Town and accepted a regular job in the fashion career. It might not have paid much, but it was steady work with a clear path for advancement, and the skills from his old job would prove to translate as well, as he was able to rack up 2 quick promotions, allowing him to hire a gardener and maid, since Hollywood clearly couldn't be trusted with those responsibilities. He'd finally achieved a degree of stability, and while that would have been enough for most people, there was still an empty part deep in his soul that could only be filled by the public's adoration. Not content just to contribute behind the scenes as a makeup artist, Hollywood decides to try his hand at show business one more time.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Of course, now he wasn't some hoople-headed yokel fresh off the bus. He knew how the game was played, and he had developed some level of talent, so it didn't take him too long to reclaim his former status. He also made sure to take the time to hold down his fellow wannabes who were just starting out. After all, nobody knew better than Hollywood just how fickle the public could be. One day you're seemingly on your way to the top, and the next you're plummeting back down to earth, as everybody's forgotten about you and moved on to the next rising star. If there's one thing Hollywood had learned during his time in Studio Town, it's that there was always someone looking to claim your spot, so it was just smart business to hold them down for as long as possible until they were relevant enough to deserve your attention. Back at home, his lack of domestic skills were becoming problematic. I mean, there was one night where he literally started 2 fires back to back while attempting to cook dinner, although luckily the fire department didn't seem to hold its clumsiness against him. However, a bit of good fortune did occur when a burglar broke in and stole one of his chairs. Now you might be thinking how having your privacy and safety violated could possibly be a good thing, but the insurance company reimbursed him for way more than the chair was worth, and when you add in the reward for helping to catch the thief, Hollywood ended up walking away with quite the pretty penny. I mean, it was the most profitable night of his life, and he slept through the whole thing. He'd then immediately use most of that cash to upgrade his TV set. Now that might seem like a dumb impulse buy, but considering how quickly it'll help satisfy his fun need, it's actually a pretty smart investment. And this streak of good luck would continue when Hollywood met Kevin, the one guy in Studio Town who wasn't a complete snob. I mean, Kevin's so cool, he didn't even hold it against Hollywood when he accidentally almost set them both on fire. When it's all said and done, he ends up being Hollywood's first actual friend in the business, and thanks to his connections, the next time Hollywood walked into the studio, he'd be walking out as a sellout. I have to say though, it is weird that he's only now getting that title, considering most of his work up to that point has consisted of shilling junk food and dick pills.
You know what? The only thing I am worried about is getting a boner.
Anyway, Hollywood decides to celebrate his recent success by throwing one of those famous Studio Town parties he'd always heard so much about. Remember, just because you're not a true superstar doesn't mean you can't live like one, and with a night filled with rock and roll and good old-fashioned debauchery, I think it's safe to say that Hollywood was embracing the celebrity lifestyle. He also became more aware of how much his star had risen during this party, as he couldn't go more than a few minutes without having somebody ask him for an autograph or tell him how great he was.
Weren't you that guy on TV? Yes, I am that guy.
And his fellow wannabes had taken notice. After brushing him off earlier in his career, his fellow stars were now far more receptive now that Hollywood had established something of a name for himself, and they were now lining up to stage photo ops in the hopes that a little bit of his shine would rub off on them. And of course, it worked both ways, as these relationships would in turn open the doors to more opportunities for Hollywood, marking the start of the most prolific period of his career. One day he was earning his acting stripes in the prestigious field of daytime television, the next he was cutting his debut album before modeling the latest high fashion trends on the runway. Before long, people were no longer content with the opportunity to ask for an autograph if they just happened to run into him. His house was now included on a tour of celebrity homes, as fans would come out daily just to catch a glimpse of their favorite new star. Some of them did take it too far and cross the line into stalker territory, but luckily having someone hyperventilate while they watch you soak in a hot tub is about as bad as this scenario can turn out in The Sims. He also began to receive some critical acclaim as he was bestowed with the prestigious Bronze Twang Award due to his contributions to the music industry. It's hard to believe that only a few weeks earlier, Hollywood had been at his lowest point and was willing to walk away from his dreams forever. So while he might not have reached the absolute pinnacle of fame, through his hard work, dedication, and complete and utter willingness to sell his body and soul to those in charge, Hollywood had managed to carve out a respectable enough career for himself. That's far more than most people can say, and that's good enough for me. What's up people, Dusty here, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you didn't, then I've got no clue why you're still here at this point, like what are you doing? But if you did enjoy it, then why not leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel to be kept up to date with all my latest content. Or don't, don't let me tell you how to live your life. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching, I'm out.